At the end of the video, I'm going to share a study secret with you that if you follow, I guarantee that you will score the 700 on the GMAT. So first of all, what are the resources? This book that you see over here, this big bulky thing, this is the GMAT Official Guide. I'm pretty sure you know about it. Maybe you have your own copy here. The other resource that I used was an error log, and I'm going to show you during the video how you can actually use that error log to set up study sessions and to track your progress. So first of all, this guide over here has more than 1,000 questions, about 1,000 questions. When I started off, I obviously didn't just solve the questions in a sequence, but I did solve a lot of them at least 2 or 3 times. So my preparation was actually divided into 2 main parts. The first part was about a month long, and the second part was also about a month long. So in the first part, I solved only the easy and the medium problems, and I solved them by topic and by type. Now, what does that mean? For example, in the quant, as you know, there's number properties, percents, that is the topic. And there are 2 question types in quant, and they are the problem solving and the data sufficiency. So in that first month, I only solved easy, medium problems, but I solved them by topic. So for example, Monday morning, session number 1, I did only problem solving number properties. Monday afternoon, sentence correction problems. That's it. And then, for example, another study session, I solved another type of problem, but only that specific question type. Why? Because in the beginning, I wanted to figure out how to solve a question that is a GMAT question and how to apply any kind of knowledge that I knew or that I needed to study within the context of a GMAT question. I also timed myself. So I didn't give myself 2 minutes per question. As you know, that is the average amount of time that you have per GMAT question. But I thought this was too fast in the beginning. I was just figuring out how to solve these GMAT problems. So I gave myself instead 3 to 4 minutes per question. And I thought that 3 to 4 minutes struck a very good balance between subjecting myself to the pressure of the exam, because I thought that was super important. You have to figure out how to solve questions within a specific time frame. And at the same time, I still needed time to figure things out. You know, you need to learn how to walk before you learn how to run. So 3 to 4 minutes was perfect to feel the pressure, but also have still enough time to figure things out. And so that was that 1 month. Every study session was just that one type of GMAT problem. Now, if you look at the back end of this guide over here, you will see that there's a classification of problems by difficulty and by topic. It's not bad, but it's not detailed enough. On my website, if you download the error log that I have, it serves as a very detailed error log and as a classification of the problems in the GMAC Official Guide. And then you can use that to focus on those problems by type and by difficulty level. And so that's what I did for about 1 month. I did that for both quant and for verbal, obviously. And what I did was very, very important. And so this is what I'm going to explain to you now. It's absolutely essential that you do that if you really want to score that 700 plus on your GMAT, if you want to break the 700 score. I really reviewed my errors very, very carefully. I even reviewed the problems that I answered correctly, but I wasn't really sure of 100%. So for example, I knew that the answer choice that is correct is delta, is answer choice D, but I didn't know why answer choice C is wrong. And so this is certainly the case for the verbal. Sometimes in the verbal section, you know that, hey, this is the correct answer choice, but I don't know why answer choice A or C is wrong. And so in those cases, you really have to dig deep and figure out why. That is really where you make the big jump in your score. That is where you make that substantial improvement. And an error log really helps you do that, really helps you nail down those mistakes and those doubts that you have, and then it helps you eliminate them. So for example, I would say, I was wrong because I answered the wrong question. And that happens very often. You say like, the question was asking me to strengthen the argument, but I picked something that weakens the argument. Or for example, I would say that the question was asking for an assumption, and the answer choice that I chose strengthening the argument. And that is a big difference. In reading comprehension, for example, I would say the question was asking for the main point of the text. It was not asking for the main point of the second paragraph. And so I wrote down the reasons that I was making those errors, but I was doing that immediately after I finished those questions. And that is absolutely essential, because if you leave it for later, you're going to forget why you made certain decisions. And it's very important that you figure out why you were making mistakes. And so you need to do that analysis immediately after you solve those questions. And then I did the same for quant. So for quant, I would say the question was asking for x minus 1. The question was not asking for x. Or I would say review, for example, compound interest. I kind of forgot compound interest. Or I would also say, I wrote down a very bad equation. So this kind of analysis is absolutely essential, and do not delay it for later. Do it immediately after you solve those questions. So a study session, therefore, is composed of two parts. I solve problems in the first half of the study session, and in the second half of the study session, I reviewed my errors. And so if you're looking, for example, at this sample analysis that I'm showing you right now, the before and after, it shows you, in this case in quant, how I solved a problem under time conditions. And then next to it, when I review, I write down how I would like to be able to solve that problem under time conditions. And you can see really that the difference is vast. And you can see that to really become a lot better, you need to write things down more efficiently. But to be able to write things down more efficiently, you need to clarify your thought process. You need to enhance your thought process. And that is the essence of how you need to prepare for the GMAT. And this analysis cannot be delayed until later. You need to do it immediately after a study session. So to conclude, in that first phase, I solved only easy medium problems. I solved them by topic. And then I dedicated a study session to just one type and just one topic, so that I can figure out how to solve things better. And to solve things better, I needed to identify my weaknesses and to enhance my thought process. That is the essence of GMAT preparation. That is how you become better at taking the GMAT, by improving your thought process. So that was the first month of my preparation, only easy medium problems. When I was done, I looked at the error log, and what's nice about the error log that you can download that I have is that you look at one of the tabs, and that tab sort of summarizes all of the questions that you've done, all the errors that you've made, and it allows you to immediately look at the areas that you need to improve. And so that was the first month. Once that month was over, I took another week to solve again the problems that I struggled with, and then I began to solve the difficult problems. Now, this was a little bit different with the difficult problems. I solved them in sequence. I did not solve them by type. And I thought that was important because it sort of simulates the actual exam. In the exam, you're not going to just get one specific type of problem. You're going to get all different types of problems. Now, the difference is that in the exam, you sometimes get easy, medium problems. But in this case, I only solved the difficult problems, and I solved them in sequence. And I gave myself this time 2 minutes per question. So I really put myself under a lot of pressure. So I opened the guide. I started with the difficult problems, problem solving, then difficult problems, data sufficiency, difficult problems, reading comprehension, critical reasoning, sentence correction, etc. So the thing that was the same as the first phase of my preparation was that only just that one type, but this time only difficult and in sequence. And I gave myself about those 2 minutes per question. So that was really tough. So, I sit down for a study session and I solved 10 difficult problems in 20 minutes. I made a lot of errors because they were all difficult problems, but that was okay. I wanted to make as many errors as I possibly could, because I thought the more errors I make now, the fewer errors I make during the exam. And that is absolutely essential. Now, a lot of people, what they do is they try to avoid making errors when they're preparing, because they want to see that they're solving a very high percentage of problems correctly. And I think that is an absolutely horrendous mistake that you can make. You don't want to avoid errors when you're preparing. Preparation is the time when you make a lot of errors. You want to make as many mistakes as you possibly could, because that is how you're going to learn. So I made a lot of mistakes, but I reviewed those mistakes and I identified why I was making those errors. And so it can be a conceptual failure. I didn't know the concept. It can be a failure to understand. I didn't really read very well the question, or I solved the wrong question, or it was a failure of, for example, writing an equation. It was a failure in solving, failure in mental math. It was sometimes even a behavioral failure. I just didn't give myself enough time to understand the question. Sometimes these errors seem very obvious, but you have to remember that when you're going really fast and you're subjecting yourself to a lot of pressure, you're going to forget to do things that you normally would when you're not feeling the pressure. And therefore, that is really the purpose of preparation, to subject yourself to a very stressful situation, to make a lot of errors, but then to identify, analyze, understand why you made those errors, and then eliminate the reason that you made those errors from your mind. And so that took about 2 or 3 weeks to solve the difficult problems. Once that was done, I reviewed my mistakes again, and then I took my first mock test. I was kind of close to the 700, so I thought, okay, I'm on the right track. And I reviewed my errors again one more time. I solved the questions again that I got incorrectly. I solved the questions again, the ones that I really had doubts with, even though I solved them correctly the first time. And guess what? I still made a lot of errors on those same questions. And this kind of makes sense because, the reason why you make errors is just somewhere in your mind. And as adults, it's very difficult for us to change. And after you've tried to solve a question, when you've done it 3 weeks ago, you're going to forget why you did it wrong. You're going to forget the details of the question, so you will get a lot of them wrong again. And then you review those errors, and that's what I did. And so I did that again, and then I took another mock test, and I was really close to where I wanted to be. And I felt, okay, I have to take the exam now because I tried to make a deadline. I didn't feel 100% ready, but I took the exam and I broke the 700. But here's what I want to say. The reason that I was able to break the 700 on the first attempt was not so much because of what I did in those 2 months. Now, obviously this really helped, but this was not really the main reason I was able to break that 700 on the first time. It's because of what I've done before I even knew what the GMAT was. So I come from an engineering background, and this is a massive advantage for the GMAT. So anybody who's an engineer, a mathematician, a lawyer, for example, they have a massive advantage when they begin to prepare for the GMAT. We're already ready without even realizing it, and this is why. The skills that you need to have to really break that 700 on the first attempt are skills that take many years to develop. And if you don't already have those skills, you're gonna have to spend that time to develop them. And here are the skills. The first one is comprehension. And I don't mean the reading comprehension type question. I mean the actual ability and skill to read text and then understand what is being said. So for example, to really test how good your comprehension is, maybe you look at a GMAT text, a reading comprehension text, or just open any book that you're reading right now and read 1 or 2 pages. You should be able to read them in about 2 minutes, and then see if you can summarize the main idea of those 2 pages in 20 words or less. If you are able to do that, then your comprehension is good, and you are probably going to be able to at least do very well on the verbal section of the GMAT with very little preparation. But if you struggle to do that, especially if English is not your first language, then you're going to have to spend that time. Now, the second skill is the intuition for grammar. Now, you may have noticed that I'm not a native speaker of English, but I've spoken English almost all my life. My university degree was in English, so that is also a really big advantage because I know when grammar is bad without having to know why it's bad. That is an advantage on the sentence correction section of the GMAT. Now, it allows you, for example, to arrive to the 90th percentile in sentence correction, but really to push beyond that and maybe get almost perfect score on sentence correction, you need to review the details, the topics that they test in the GMAT, the 8 topics of sentence correction, and develop that skill even better. I'll talk about that a little bit later in the video. Now, the third skill is also an intuition for the rules of math. And that is algebra, arithmetic, mental math, for example, long division, multiplication in your head, and the skill to read a lot of text and translate it into a clear, concise, and precise equation. So these 3 skills, right, comprehension, grammar, and the math, they are these skills that you need to have very polished, very strong, to actually be able to break the 700 on your first attempt, or to break the 700 in about 2 months of preparation. Anybody who breaks the 700 in 2 months or less, it is because of those skills that they've developed over so many years. It is not because of those 2 months or 2 weeks or 3 weeks of preparation before the first time they take the GMAT. And so if you're struggling with the GMAT and you're not making any progress, don't feel frustrated. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just that you need to improve those skills because you haven't had the opportunity maybe to develop them until now. And so here's how you do that. So if you're struggling with reading, what I recommend is that you use other standardized tests. So number 1, you can use the LSAT, the LSAT, and that is like the GMAT for lawyers. If you want to go to law school in the US, you need to take the LSAT. What's amazing about this resource is that there are thousands and thousands of questions, and they're designed in a very similar way that GMAT questions are designed. So any kind of improvement in that skill that you make, it will translate to the GMAT problems, because the skill to comprehend is really the same, and it's just reading text and understanding the idea behind that text and then expressing that idea in very few words. And so you can do that using the LSAT problems. Now in math, what you can use is the GRE. So the GRE is another exam that you should do before you apply for a master's degree. But in a lot of business schools, you can also submit the GRE score instead of the GMAT score. And so even though questions are slightly different in the GRE exam, the skill that you develop while you solve those GRE problems will translate to the GMAT. So you can use those problems as well to develop that skill. Now, why is it helpful? Why is it important to actually improve your skills in comprehension and grammar and math before you go back and you solve GMAT problems? I think that you can derive more value out of GMAT problems if you have that skill set developed. If that skill set is really weak, you're not going to extract a lot of value out of GMAT problems, because you're always going to have to look for a solution, for a video, for an explanation, for someone to tell you how to progress through those questions. Now, looking for guidance and help is important, but if you're always doing it as you're solving GMAT problems, you're not going to get a lot of value out of them, because you really don't have the skill to be autonomous. You need to be, to a very large extent, autonomous when you're solving GMAT problems, and sometimes or occasionally looking for guidance. If you're always looking for guidance, this means you need to develop that skill set before you focus on those GMAT problems. Now, how much time do you need to actually make that progress that you're looking for? If you're scoring between 500 to 600 on the GMAT, you're about 6 to 8 months away from a 700 at least. You may need more time. So you need to solve or work on those extra resources that I mentioned before you focus on GMAT problems and before you're really going to be close to a 700 score. If you're scoring between 400 to 500 on a GMAT or a mock test, you're at least 18 months away from a 700 on the GMAT. And I'm being very honest with you, and I'm telling you again before, it's not because there's something wrong with you, it's because you don't have those skills and you haven't had the opportunity to develop the skills that I mentioned. Maybe because you're not an engineer or your English is just very bad, it's not your native language and you haven't had the opportunity to develop your English level skill. And I mean, if you're in denial about that, you're going to be very frustrated. You're going to put really unrealistic deadlines, and you're going to be very frustrated when you don't meet them, and you may just abandon the MBA project altogether. So use that timeline to understand and to make better plans and to really put a better deadline so that your life is not very frustrating. And if you have a specific question, feel free to comment below, or you can reach me on my website. Now, psychology of preparation and test taking is also very important, and I said I'm going to talk about that. Now, mindset is you have to embrace making errors. You cannot avoid making errors when you're preparing, and you cannot really feel frustrated when you're making errors. You have to make as many errors as you could. Psychology of the exam, you cannot be afraid of uncertainty, and you should not need conditions to be perfect. A lot of people, when they go to the exam, they look for the first sign of adversity or surprise, and they choose not to fight during the exam. You cannot be like that. You cannot complain about the fact that the room is cold or someone's next to you typing really loud. You shouldn't care about those things. And so what you need to do is you need to embrace the uncertainty and the hostility of the exam and continue to do what you learned how to do throughout your preparation. When I go to the exam, I feel anxious, but that didn't really matter because I rehearsed a very explicit thought process, because I embraced making errors. And so because I was very well prepared, it didn't really matter that I was anxious during the exam. Now, at the beginning of the video, I promised a study secret that if you follow, you will break the 700, and here it is. Learn how to teach the problems that you struggle with. If you learn how to teach the problems that you struggle with, you will have to identify the ultimate cause of your mistakes. And when you identify the ultimate cause of your errors and your mistakes, you're going to be able to eliminate it. So learn how to teach the problems that you struggle with, and I guarantee you will break the 700. It may not be in 2 months, but you certainly will make a very substantial progress. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful, and I hope that it will help you achieve your goals. If you like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe to my channel, hit the notification button so you don't miss any future videos. Feel free to comment below if you have any questions, and see you on the next video.